Welcome to another episode of Down the Pipeline. This week we actually have a lot of really cool Kickstarters. I know I didn't film anything last week, and it's because there really wasn't. There was like maybe there was one Kickstarter that actually held a lot of interest for me last week, and that really didn't seem like enough. And especially seeing as how it's still running, it got mentioned this week. So this week we actually had a lot of really cool things happen in gaming, and I'm here to share them with you. And first one is a role playing game by Robert Schwalb called Shadow of the Demon Lord. It is a what appears to be a low ish fantasy, more of a dark fantasy, rules light role playing game. And it actually looks really cool. It's set in this world where there's a demon lord who is on the brink of breaking into the world is that the game is based in, and there's all these dark horrific elements, and he's beginning to influence, and his minions are beginning to work more openly in the world. And this actually seems to create this really cool atmosphere for the game. The idea is pulls from things like Dark Sun, Warhammer, death metal, and these are all things that I think are awesome. So for a game to have all of these elements and really play to the cater to that idea of a game, I think is really cool. And I'm really excited, honestly, for this, just because from the looks of the art, and the actual creator's resume of games that he's worked on. I mean, the list goes on. We're talking developing of D&D, Star Wars, Numenera, The Strange. He's got the Kickstarter has collaborations with a lot of these people. I think Monty Cook's listed on there. Bruce Cordell is also on there, and this Kickstarter has actually already been funded, and it still has 28 days to go. It's 10K over its goal, and I think this is really cool because this shows that there's a heavy interest in these low fantasy games, which is the one thing that I found has been severely lacking in the industry in its mainstream element. I mean, we have things like Dark Sun and Ravenloft from Second Edition, which were all really dark and gritty, and in their own ways, low magic ish in their feeling. We didn't have things like Eberron, where you've got sky rails and you don't have magic being thrown out everywhere. So I really like that this is gaining enough traction that it can be successfully funded. And the game actually claims that you can have your character done in a handful of minutes. You can, having learned the game, and that you can prep as a GM in a relatively comparable amount of time. And I think this is also really good because what I've found from some games is that there's a really steep learning curve. You have to sit down to have character creation sessions, not just to help coordinate the party, but to actually build the characters and teach people how to build and play and everything. So the idea that a game is that quick and simple to learn actually really appeals to me, because it means that I could teach someone to play a game in 10 minutes. I could pitch it to them in an elevator, and by the time we got to the top, they know how to play. And I really like that. The one thing I'm less happy about, and this is really just a personal preference, but I understand its appeal, is the game is slated, like the idea of a campaign is only like 2 months for a character, maybe three if if you push it, because your characters only go from level 1 to 10, and you're supposed to have achieved that campaign, that end game, that 10th level, in about 11 sessions. And I like this on the one hand because it means that when I sit down for a campaign, I know that chances are I'll be able to finish that story before life intervenes, for one of my players, or for all my players, or for me, and disrupts the entire thing. But I also kind of dislike it because that to me says I've got a very short window to tell a story, and that seems like a really short window for a lot of character growth and development and everything to really see a character's journey and their that growth. So I think it's really cool that that's the thing that's catching on, and I've seen it in a couple of games now. Is that idea for shorter games, shorter playtime, so that you can experience more, so that you can see more, and so that you can actually complete a story and see an end game in under a year, which has its merits and flaws, I guess. But this game actually has a lot of really good pledge levels. So I encourage you to check it out. Um, if you like dark fantasy, if you like heavy metal, if you like all that stuff, it appears to be really easy to get into. The art's really cool. The mechanics are supposed to be really simple, and I'm excited to see it happen. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to back it. Doing all these Kickstarters has made my wallet very, very angry. So I have to be very selective in what I can actually back and what realistically I can do. But I think it's gonna be really cool. And like I said, it's met its goal, so it's gonna happen. And it still has 28 days to go, so there's plenty of time to hit so many stretch goals that Robert Schwalb runs out of things to claim that to put up. And yeah, moving into another game that I thought was really cool is Blades in the Dark by John Harper of 1-7 Design. And this is a really cool game in a couple of ways. So you take on the role of scoundrels and mercenaries and brutish, thuggish types, and you're a crew set in a empire, a darker empire where the city that the game is based in, one of the cities, I should say, is haunted. So this gives it this dark, shadowy feeling and element to it, which I think is really cool. Much like the darker fantasy, I really like horror settings. So, and the fact that you play like at best an anti-hero. The game is designed to play these outsiders of society, and that's really cool. Just in that regard, that's what the game's focusing on. But that's not what makes it unique. What I think is really cool, and this is really why it's on this list, is it focuses so much on the party, the crew, that not only do the characters kind of gain levels and grow, but the crew actually gains levels and grows, gaining more abilities and all sorts of things like that. So it really focuses on that teamwork element, and I think that is just phenomenal because it's I think the only game I've seen that really had a party element was The One Ring by Cubicle 7, which had the fellowship points. I thought it was really cool because it meant it gave a force for the group to play with, not only so that they play together, like their characters would interact with one another in a way that made sense, but also having that mechanical element that really bound them together. I felt really helped forge those bonds further, and I in a non-gamey way. So to have a game right in essentially the party levels up, I think is really cool. And you can define it by if you're mercenaries, or you assassins, or you vagabonds, or thieves. And I think that's really cool. Just the entire idea of being scoundrels and anti-heroes in a haunted city aside. And the system is also supposed to be, it claims to be really easy to get into, really light, and easy to understand, and build your characters and get underway. And this project also has funded itself time and time over. It's at just under $70,000 of its $7,500 limit. So it is almost 10 times over its funding. It has 27 days to go. So the stretch goals are already coming out, and among them are things like alternate settings, like the Wild West. There's plans for things like steampunk and modern and all these really cool things. And I like this because currently I'm in the process of reading the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. And it really focuses on kind of that. The world focuses on, thief, like criminal crews. Like that's a big element in like cities and stuff. So that a game, just coincidentally, honestly, but happens to have that element. I think it's really cool, and I like the idea that you build as a party and you grow as a party, as opposed to, we all work together because we're bound by some happenstance quest that links us together, or what have you. You start, as a crew working together. I think that's really cool. It'll really help, a group grow, or if you're a new group, it'll teach you to work together. If you're veterans, it'll just be a really cool experience to work around that and play different elements in a heist. Pull off Ocean's 11, or pull off giant assassination missions. And I think that's awesome that they focus so much on this criminal job heist element. And like I said, it's overly funded, so stretch goals are just everywhere. Moving on to the next one. This is the one that was actually the carryover from last week. Is the game Witch by Angry Hamster Publishing. And this game is funded, and I believe it's in euros. So, if you're in the U.S., no, it's in the Netherlands. So, for us in the U.S., keep in mind that you will probably pay international shipping if you get one of those. But anyway, the game is a modern dark fantasy, and it actually is really cool, the concept that they're working with. So you take on a role of the fated, or a fated, or there's a caster of sorts, and they've actually broken up your stereotypical caster names into classes. So things like liches, druids, warlocks, things like that. They're actual classes with abilities and spells and everything like that. And I like this because it takes from lore and makes it, there's always stories, about druids and this, that, and the other, and it takes that, pulls it into the modern world, and makes it playable in this in a way that makes sense. So the lich isn't a skeleton; they're more like necromancers, and I think this is really cool because it allows you to not only just play in the modern, but it also allows you to play in the in a dark medieval era, and still play with the same elements, and also explain the origin of these terms. And it also, keeping with that trend of playing with the folklore surrounding witches and everything, actually how you gain the power to cast these spells in their originality is, well, in sorry, not that sounds weird, in like how you gain the ability is by selling your soul to a demon. So you are actually making deals with the devil, or a demon at least. So it explains that medieval idea of you know deals with the devil to cast spells. And yet again, for the same reason I like this, because it's taking the lore that you know about all of these things and making those stories more real, and then putting you in the world to play with it. And I think this is just great because it lessens that learning curve. So you not only you just have to learn the system and how it is set up now. You don't have to try and wrap your head around, well, what about back then or here, or why is this that way. It all makes sense because it's basing itself off of current things. And it also, keeping with that trend, it also uses hunters who, as you can assume, hunt witches and warlocks and hunt all of these things. So, whereas witchcraft survived in the modern knights, so too do the hunters who hunted them and, accused them of their devilry. And I like this because I just think that's really cool that it lessens that learning curve and takes all of that folklore and, puts it into a game. The system is supposed to be relatively easy also, and so that's always exciting. And this project is also funded. It's got just over 9,000 euros, I still believe, out of its 4,500. As our final thing that's happened, this is more mainstream. Uh, this past week, Wizards of the Coast released the sourcebook for D&D, the Elemental Evil Player's Companion, for free on their website. And in it has four new races, though that it's debatable how playable they actually are in a standard setting. And I'll get to that in a second why. And also new spells for pretty much everything: druids, wizards, everything. And I think this is just really cool that this is the direction that Wizards is taking, as opposed to here's a source book that you may want, pay us another $30. They're releasing the material that I would actually want for free, and this way I don't have to go and buy their adventure path that I won't use to get more options for me to play. I think this is just really awesome, and I'm really excited for the new direction that Fifth Edition D&D is in. Even if I don't play it all that much, I just enjoy to see that this, as the big mainstream game that when people talk about tabletop gaming, if they're not in the hobby, D&D is what they instantly reference. So to see that this is actually really moving back in the direction for the community, and towards what the community really wants, I think this is awesome. Also within this book, there is what I believe to be a hint that we're going to see a Dark Sun source book in the future, because they make mention of the world of Athos, which is the actual world for Dark Sun. And so I think it's really awesome, because I think Dark Sun was a great setting that was done awfully in 4th edition, just because, and this is not a slight against 4th edition, I enjoy 4th edition. 4th edition was not set up for the dark, grim setting that was Dark Sun. 4th edition wasn't set up for it. So to see Dark Sun possibly get another shot, along with my favorite setting, Ravenloft, I think will be awesome, and I'm super excited to see what's going to happen. As for how playable these races are, as I mentioned before, there's four of them. The Goliath, which is pretty playable. The Ganassi is playable in its own right. The Deep Gnome doesn't seem too broken, but the Arakocra, bird people, have a flight speed of 50. Just off the get-go. Now, I love and hate this, because I hated the flight speed of the Pixies, because they let you fly but not enough to do anything with it. And so I thought that was dumb and just obnoxious. So to see that they have decided to actually give you full flight, as opposed to, hampering it, I think is awesome. But at the same time, I personally would not let anyone in my party have flight speed of 50 at level 1. You're just asking for your campaign to get entirely destroyed, because he'll fly past everything. And yeah, so that's everything that happened this week that I thought was really cool, that I really wanted to share with you. And just as a quick shout out, this is not RPG related whatsoever, but the band Valentine Wolfe, which is this weird chamber, like Victorian chamber music / heavy metal, has their Kickstarter going on for another 52 hours from this video being posted. I encourage you to check it out if you enjoy metal, or if you like supporting, smaller local bands. Well, local for me. And if you enjoy smaller bands, if you enjoy metal, I encourage you to check them out. They've got a Facebook, they got YouTube, and their Kickstarter. I'll put a link to it down below. I encourage you to check it out. It's funded, but obviously The more money they get, the more music they can make. So that's everything. And until next week, take it easy.